Pacific Rim.
Growing up as a little kid, my favorite movies usually involved giant monsters. Movies like Godzilla, Gamera, Rodan, and War of the Gargantuas, which is actually my favorite giant monster movie, but that's a discussion for another day. Giant monsters destroying each other and just wiping out everything in their path was something that I loved. I was passionate about it. I ate that shit up like nothing else. Here in America, it's rare for us to get a giant monster movie that was actually released in theaters. I mean, the only movies that I can really think of that came out in the past few years that involved giant monsters were Cloverfield and Clash of the Titans. When the Kraken came out, but in those movies, the monsters were never really at the center of attention. Cloverfield was more about the humans trying to escape, with only the monster appearing throughout the film, and the Kraken only really appears at the end. I also know about that movie Skyline that had a sort of monster moment, but let's face it, that movie sucked. So really, I've never had the experience of seeing a giant monster movie on the big screen where it's about the monsters and they get into fights. So finally, after all this time, here comes the movie Pacific Rim. Now, I first heard about this movie on the website Bloody Disgusting, and at the time, I spazzed out at the thought of seeing this movie because it's a giant monster movie here in America, and the monsters actually get into fights and destroy things. To me, this was a dream come true. And maybe after seeing this movie, more people would appreciate the giant monster movie genre, which I have appreciated over the years and I love so much. So, time, it passed by and I anticipated the movie's release. I imagined in my head what was going to happen. Then suddenly, it happened. And I was in the theater and, I must have shed a tear because this is the movie I waited for my whole entire life. And, it didn't really disappoint. It was fantastic. No, it was better than that. It was fucking awesome. Pacific Rim isn't your standard movie blockbuster. It wasn't really made just for the year it was released. The movie has some strong staying power, and I think that when people go to see this movie, that they will be caught off guard by how entertaining this movie is, and I can attribute that to director Guillermo del Toro. His work includes the Hellboy films, Blade 2, and Pan's Labyrinth. I can easily tell that he had so much fun making the movie, and that he really understands the genre. He understands that the monsters are the heart and soul of the film, and gives us monster movie lovers what we want. I suppose at this point I should probably talk about the plot for those of you who don't really know what the movie's about. I mean, if you've seen the trailer, you get the idea. It's robots versus monsters, just fighting for, the fate of the world. But, I suppose I'll go into a little bit more detail, but at the same time, I really don't want to give too much away because it's more fun to be surprised nowadays. So basically, the movie is about the war that we've had with these aliens that come up from the Pacific Ocean and a portal between our world, the humans, and the alien world of these monsters called kaiju, which are the giant beasts. Now, kaiju in Japanese refers to a giant monster, just in case you didn't know. So basically, us, the humans, have been trying to defend ourselves from these giant beasts for years, and so we end up building these gigantic robots called Jaegers. The best way to describe how these things are piloted is to think, like the anime Gundam Wing, but with two people. Gundam Wing, if you don't know, basically one guy would get into, the pilot suit of, the Gundam, and then he'd, move his arm, and then that would move the robot. Basically, they're intertwined in a way. They're neurally linked, which is a concept that is attacked in the movie. It takes at least two people to pilot these things because the neural load is too much for one person to handle, which, is another layer to this movie that makes it more fresh and clever. That whole idea of sharing a neural load to pilot these robots is a pretty fresh and clever idea, and it makes for a great and interesting concept. And that's one of the many layers to this movie that makes it so great. The fight scenes are awesome, the musical score is incredible. And it's a pretty good tune to listen to. I recommend it. I think it should get an Oscar nom, but that's not going to happen because we know Hollywood. They don't acknowledge these things. I feel like everyone involved did a good job. The acting was solid all throughout by everyone involved, but there were four performances especially that really stood out to me. Idris Elba was great as usual. Charlie Day is always pretty funny. Him and that guy who played Stryver from The Dark Knight Rises have, some really good on-screen chemistry, and they're a fine example of comedic relief done right. They weren't trying to be funny, they just naturally were. And it's not like they were forcing the comedy, it just came natural. And last but not least, we have Ron Perlman. That's all I really have to say because Ron Perlman is great in everything that he does. And I'd have to rank this as one of his most memorable performances just because when he first appears in the movie, you're like, oh my god, only Ron Perlman can play this character because Ron Perlman is just fucking awesome. I love Ron Perlman. And the two leads did good as well. So, but these four performances are the ones that really stood out to me. Well, I feel like I should stop about here. I really love this movie, and I think it's the best movie of the summer. Hopefully, this movie resurrects the kaiju genre. I mean, we're already getting Godzilla coming out next year, which I am eagerly anticipating more than any other movie in history because Godzilla was always my favorite and is still my favorite movie monster and series of movies. And, it's being done by the same company that did Pacific Rim, so how can you go wrong? Final thoughts, go see this movie in the theater if you can, especially. It's like I said, it's going to have some strong staying power over the years. I saw this movie 4 times already, and that's saying a bit much. And I especially recommend taking your younger kids to see this movie because they will cheer the entire time. Also, I thought the 3D was done pretty well. I hope this movie does well. I mean, it still hasn't broken 100 million in the States at the point that I'm writing this, but I think it will. Also, it had the biggest opening ever in China, which is some really good news. Overseas performance is key to, the film's success. It's funny how people complain how there's a lack of originality in movies nowadays, but when a movie like this comes out that's not based on anything and is, has some original concepts in it, they don't go out to see it. So, that's their own problem for, the lack of originality. But, that's a talk for another day. It's officially time to wrap this review up. Go see this movie. Every time I watch it, the movie keeps getting better and better, so I can't give it a rating yet, but take my word for it, the movie kicks some serious ass.